Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'd like to call us to order. Meredith, please call the roll.
Holly Bloodworth,
Here.
Mike Borchers,
Here.
Paul Long,
Here.
Justin Pate,
Here.
Julie Pyle,
Here.
Randy Poe,
Here.
Sharon Robinson,
Here.
Lee Todd,
Here.
Steve Trimble,
Here.
Diane Woods,
Here.
Lou Young,
Here.
Lawrence McCroby,
Here.
Preston Graham,
Here.
Secretary Link,
Here.
President Thompson. Okay, Chair, you do have a quorum.
Thank you so much. We have a very packed agenda today and tomorrow, so I'd like for us to just weigh in with the first item of internal board business. Summary minutes for the August 7, 2024 regular meeting day 1 and August 8, 2024 KBE regular meeting day 2, August 8, 2024 KBE State Schools Committee meeting, August 8, 2024 United We Learn Committee meeting, and September 26, 2024 KBE Awards Committee meeting were distributed to you in advance. Are there any corrections to any of these minutes? If not, I would ask a motion to approve those minutes. May I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Powell. It's been moved and seconded. I will call the question. All in favor of approving these minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Thank you so much. Our next item of internal board business concerns the Kevin C. Brown Strategic Priority Award, and I'd call on the committee, awards committee chair, Diane Woods, to make the report.
Thank you, Chair Robinson. It is my pleasure to present this script concerning our thoughts on the award. Kevin C. Brown served at the KDE in various roles from 2004 to 2018. Most recently, Brown served as the Interim Commissioner of Education from December 2019 to December 2020. Brown's time at the department throughout 2020 was marked with significant challenges that called for strategic educational leadership and clear ongoing communication that was forward-thinking, action-oriented, and aimed at advancing efforts to educate, feed, and support Kentucky's 650,000 students during a global pandemic. The priority area for this award changes from year to year based upon the desire of the board. On behalf of the awards committee, I would like to share that the committee met on September 26 and identified the following strategic priority areas and award criteria. The goal of Senate Bill 9, 2022, the Read to Succeed Act, is to support evidence-based early literacy instruction throughout the Commonwealth by investing in teachers to increase student success in reading. A child's ability to read is a critical predictor of both educational and lifelong success. Students must have every opportunity to gain and strengthen this skill, and teachers must be equipped and empowered in the teaching of reading to best support their students. The 2024 award seeks to recognize a public school or district that has demonstrated a strong commitment to enhancing early literacy through the effective adoption and implementation of evidence-based practices as outlined in Senate Bill 9, 2022, the Read to Succeed Act. Criteria for the award includes, number one, notable efforts in supporting the successful adoption and implementation of evidence-based early literacy instruction. This includes investment in professional development and our instructional resources to equip teachers with the latest evidence-based practices for teaching reading. Number 2, evidence of successful implementation of the Read to Succeed Act, focusing on policies and practices that enhance early literacy outcomes. This includes providing teachers with the resources and support needed to effectively teach reading and offering students ample opportunities to develop and strengthen their reading skills. Number 3 and final criteria for the award, engagement with the community to support early literacy initiatives, recognizing that literacy is a collective effort. This includes collaboration with families, local organizations, and other stakeholders to create a literacy-rich environment that extends beyond the classroom. I would like to move approval of the strategic priority and criteria for the 2024 Kevin C. Brown Strategic Priority Award and ask the chair for the board's consideration.
Thank you so much, Diane. Coming from the committee, the motion does not require a second. I'll ask now, are there any questions or discussion regarding this recommendation from the awards committee? Then I will call for a vote. All those in favor of accepting this recommendation from the awards committee say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Congratulations, awards committee. Thank you so
This
very
is gonna
much.
be so good. This is
Yeah, you do have a good
Can't wait.
committee.
Yes.
Wait
Can't wait to read the applications.
Yeah. Oh, wow. And I'm looking forward to seeing, celebrating
Yes.
the implementation of the Read to Succeed Act. Our next item regards our ethics training, and so I'm going to ask our General Counsel, Todd Allen, and Kentucky Branch Ethics Commission Executive Director Susan Clary to facilitate this training.
Madam Chair, our presenter from the Ethics Commission isn't here yet.
Oh,
So perhaps if we took a few more agenda items to give her a few more minutes to arrive.
okay. With the board's consent, then we'll continue with our agenda and circle back when we're ready. Well, included. Oh, fabulous. Do you mind waiting just a few minutes and we'll get set up?
I had some goodies to give them, but I.
Happy to pass those out for you.
Okay. Copy. Oh, you said one.
Well, I didn't. We're running a little bit early. You're fine.
Well, that's a good one.
Board members, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Susan Clary, who's the Executive Director of the Executive Branch Ethics Commission. And we had her timed for 1:15, so she's not late. We're just early. So I, in my role as the ethics officer for the department and the board, contact Susan on perhaps a regular basis to ask questions of her. And we thought this would be a good opportunity for her to come and provide a presentation to board members on their ethical obligations under the Executive Branch Ethics Code. We have some new board members who this will be new information for, some returning and existing board members that this will be a refresher for. So I will turn it over to Susan. And I'm
Thank
going to pass some
you.
things out that she's given.
Yeah, thank you very much. You're very lucky to have our #1 ethics officer. Each agency has an ethics officer, and Todd is very active and very helpful, and I know very helpful to you as well. Thank you for letting me talk to you about ethics today, and thank you for your ethical public service. I hope to give you some useful information. I think if you have a presentation and get one really good thought out of it, so I'll try to at least give you at least one today. It's great to be here in person, but we are available to you all the time for advice. And I make those phone calls, answer those, and I think Todd would say I'm fairly quick in returning the phone call. I can get you an informal opinion if you need that, and we also do formal opinions if that's necessary. My longstanding background, as Todd knows, is with the Supreme Court of Kentucky. I was there 38 years as their general counsel and the clerk and the court administrator. But the joy in my life, in my lifetime, job or privilege was to be the daughter of an elementary school teacher. And she taught for 43 years. So I want to see the looks on people's faces when you say that. So I have 38 in as a public servant. She had 43, but they brought me back. So I may still make it to what our family demanded from a family of public servants. Went to law school and was the embarrassment to my family because they all held education in such high esteem. And so as a teenager, I got to hear lots of boring conversations about what was wrong with central office and what my mom needed in her classroom and what was right about central office. And I guess circle back, I rode with the Chief Justice and his law clerk every day back to Lexington and back here. And we talked about cases. You'd work cases, you'd get in the car and go home and get the Socratic method about cases for another hour. And then we got hit by this really obscure case called Rose versus Council. And I had always, as clerk, gotten the documents from the circuit court when they were filed. So we talked about Rose versus Council, months before it came, and then back and forth. And, great discussions about whether just what the appellants had asked for would be enough. And of course, wanted to give my opinion. I was like, no, it's not enough. It was, won't deal with nepotism. It won't give the folks on the ground what they need. Stevens had the votes for it as he had written at the Supreme Court. If you don't have 4 votes, it doesn't matter. He came into my office one day and said, let's just throw the whole thing out. You think we can do it? And that was that with that case. My point being, what you do here is very meaningful and dear to so many people that you probably don't even know. And the other point being, that child that's listening to you that probably doesn't seem like they're listening to you may wind up listen to you and maybe do a thing or two with it. So what you do and your work is truly so important to all of us. So why am I here? We're all so ethical. And I think it's because throughout time, there's been discussion about ethics. Whether you look at it philosophically or altruistically, our codes, the judicial and lawyer codes, are sort of something you should attain. They're not written very objectively, and people disagree. So our code in Kentucky is an objective code, and it's there to protect all the employees as much as the agency, because I think it clarifies what we're looking at, what types of conduct we prohibit. It came out of Bob Trot. I don't know if any of you all are old enough to remember Bob Trot. I was around for that. That was a national scandal, and the Ethics Commission only came into being right after it in '92. 12 legislators went to federal prison for taking bribes. And the BOP part of it was business, occupations, and professions. That was a committee that took bribes for a trotting track out in Western Kentucky that was kind of besieged by a thoroughbred track. And the gentleman that owned the trotting track sought help from the legislature. They turned him down, but one of the senators said, we'll take $100,000 and we'll give you some help. And he decided to get some help from the FBI. So Out of that grew legislative ethics and executive ethics. Let's see here. How are we gonna?
Do you want to use that?
Yeah.
You just use those arrows. It should advance through your
Does this
slides.
go?
The arrow this way,
Okay.
I think. Well, maybe not.
You know,
Let's see.
if I can give it up, I will, believe me.
There we go. Yeah,
Okay.
that works.
Yeah. Yeah. So, who we are, and it's just on there. There's our statutory basis in 11A, and the KAR is 9 for us. We have 2 executive orders regarding boards that are not like this board. You are specifically mentioned in 11A as a board member that is covered by the full executive ethics code. I'll talk to you about like other employment when I get to that part, because I know it works a little differently with this board, but you are one of the several mentioned that are covered by our code. What we do, we have a 5-member commission. Recently, Judge Roger Crittenden was chair, and he has retired. So it's Senator David Karam, my former boss at the Supreme Court, Dan Venners, former Lieutenant Governor Crit Llewellyn, David Sanford, who used to be with the PSC, and then Richard Campbell, who was a workers' comp law judge for a long time. So we've got a great group, and they're bipartisan. And again, what we want to do is give advice on the code. We don't want to be investigating cases. That's not our aim. So call us for that and advisory opinions. But we do investigate cases and can impose civil penalties. We refer the criminal cases to the Attorney General. So who's involved with this? Who's covered by this? Everyone in the executive branch, from the governor, secretary of state, attorney general. You may have read some of the cases. I just got through filing one in the Court of Appeals. Yeah, all the constitutional officers are covered by our code of ethics. And then major management personnel, they file statements of financial disclosure. I've got a little clip in there. That's you as well, because you are at that level in our government. There are a few extra rules that apply to major management folks that we'll talk about. And both non-merit and merit are covered by this. Even full-time contract workers. PVAs, that surprises people. We have the PVAs and the Commonwealth attorneys. And then we have certain public corporations like Kentucky Housing Corporation has opted in and put in their legislation. And then we had the Racing Commission and the new corporation. We'll have the new corporation as well. So there are a few that are exempt. It's kind of interesting who is exempt. The lottery, and then we do not have public universities or your local boards. We do not have those as well. We don't have KSP, and then the Higher Education Assistance Authority, except like many of them, they voluntarily do follow our code.
It's interesting.
Yeah. We also cover lobbyists in the executive branch. So anyone that's seeking an RFP or a grant from you or any type of funds, they should be registered with us as well. And I'm sure you're on that. But a lot of times they don't know that to try to get state funds, they do need to divulge that information. And that's available on the website in case you're interested. I want to look up someone. We keep all that up for everyone. Statement of financial disclosure. Do you have new folks that would have filed one?
We do have some new folks,
Yeah.
yes.
And those are public information as well, but our system is so outdated that people have to ask for those. They are open records, but you have to have an open records request. You can imagine how busy we are around election time because everybody wants to know how much money all the candidates have. But normally we get very few requests for information. Your annual statement will be due just like your tax return, so throw it in the pile with your tax return. And we do have penalties for failure to provide that information. $5,000, it's pretty hefty penalty for us if those aren't filed. Yeah, so what are we talking about for public employees? What does the code want you to be? Obviously, number one, independent and impartial, not favoring your family or friends. Coming from the judiciary, we had serious rules about that, as you would expect, not benefiting from any of the actions that you take. Secondly, decisions and policies being made following the established processes of government. I think we all feel like if you've gone through the model procurement code that you question that statement and a lot of the bureaucracy in government, but it's there for a purpose. We do have cases with state employees that have thwarted those processes for their personal gain or someone in their family. So I always tell people too, if you don't have a policy, propose it to your agency because those are the things that protect you and the agency. Public servants should not use public office to obtain private benefits. I mean, we're called servants for a reason. I mean, everything in this room, a taxpayer's paid for, or we've gotten a grant or some sort of state money is involved. We have a duty to conserve that, to use it legally and properly. We've gone to telecommuting, had a lady that was selling the equivalent of Tupperware, I show my age, on her state computer. So it's morphed how we use our state resources inappropriately. But that's an easy one for me. And then your actions should promote the public confidence in the integrity of the executive branch. In the judicial world, we call that no appearance of impropriety. If you don't want it on the front page of the Herald Leader, don't do it. And one way when we talk about conflicts, and I gave you something from our former governor, Steve Beshear, where he talks about conflicts, recognizing folks are volunteering, giving time, to these boards. They're going to be conflicts. You have connections. You're on this board for a reason because you do know this area and you have been involved in this area. So it's natural there are going to be conflicts. The conflict isn't the problem. It's the way you handle it. That's the main part of how we deal with conflicts. And then, let's see if I got the last one. For those of us that are full-time public servants, we're to attempt to avoid conflicts. In the court system, I was not one that went to cocktail parties of law firms and things. The justices didn't. Sometimes it's hard to walk that line, but you know that people will assume that you have a conflict of interest. So that one is a hard one to follow, but I think if it's right in front of you, you know to avoid it. Let me see how far I've gotten here with you. Yeah, what's actually prohibited, and this comes out of the statute, using your influence, which involve in a matter that involves a substantial conflict between your personal and private interest and the duties of the public. Of course, that's using your position here as a board member where there's a conflict, or using your position to influence a public agency in derogation of the state at large, telling people that you're a board member to get something accomplished, using your position to obtain financial gain for yourself or for other members of your family. We actually have a case right now where a state worker, I find it impossible, but she used her position to get a very large contract for her husband's company by changing names of companies and things like that. They even evaded the procurement. So that's where that section would come in. And then using your position to create privileges, normally advantages for yourself or for others in derogation of the public interest at large. That's normally what we charge under those sections. Oops. Oh, well, I went way go. We'll show you this one because it's kind of interesting. Yeah, I think that's where I was. I told you yeah. How to avoid conflicts, if you can, obviously, stay away from those issues. But what is required, and it's in this memo along with a form, is disclosure of the conflict, and that you'll be abstaining from any decision on that. Have you all done anything like that, or?
I don't think have had the need for any of the current board members to do an abstention memo. They have, although, completed outside employment requests for the ones who are working outside.
Yeah, that would be. You don't have to divulge the reasons for the conflict. According to the Ethics Commission, it's enough that you just divulge that there is a conflict, you feel there's a personal conflict, and then the superior has the duty to find a replacement if you need that, like on a hiring board, say. But normally it will be just the board will meet. We do have some boards where it's a real problem because of the composition of the boards. They have folks that are seeking funds from those boards. So sometimes it can be a problem, which is seating a full board, but I don't think with you that would be a problem. One case where we had this issue was the Racing Commission. Since they've changed to a corporation, I feel comfortable using them for my examples. But one of the commissioners, they were giving that last quarter horse track license. I'm sure I'm killing what it's exactly called, but it was the last one available. The law firm representing the person attempting to get that license, the commissioner's son worked for the law firm. And in gifts, it's only your nuclear family. When we get the gifts, it's because somebody's going to give it to you. They could give it to your wife, and that's about as far as we want to go. But this was a grown son, in a law firm, but he was assigned to work on this case. So the commissioner called me. I knew him. I said, get off. It's one of those where it had maybe more the appearance of impropriety than real impropriety because his son didn't live with him. The money wasn't coming directly to his son, but, that would just look like that law firm had been retained for that reason, and it was going to rebound so badly on the Racing Commission. He got off. He decided to get off, and indeed another member of the Racing Commission recused from that, and they voted 7-0 unanimously, to approve that, so that now that agency doesn't have to face any rebound ever against that decision. So I applaud them on that. We have another case where an individual with hiring knew that he had a conflict, told his supervisor, and they're like, "You're such a great guy, Todd. We know you can do it anyway. You come on in and sit on the panel." He called us and we said, "No, your supervisor can't waive your conflict for you, So everyone's conflict, their view of it is personal to them, and you'll make that decision about it. Cautionary tale, though, is that if you don't recuse, we just kind of clip through those things that we do prosecute for, it will look as if you have used your office for a certain purpose. So that's why it's better to just make sure that you disclose and at least offer to recuse on these cases. Does anybody have any questions on this? Do you all have? Yeah.
And could you tell a little bit about the difference between recusing and abstaining from a vote?
It's really the same.
Is that okay?
Yeah, it's a lawyer word. I think we always call it recusal. The only thing is, don't stay in the room. If you abstain on the vote, actually leave. That's more, I think, what recusal said. I know we had a case in the judicial world where a judge recused off his own divorce case at the appellate level, but he read the opinion and stayed in the room. That's not good enough. So as long as, and don't talk to your seatmates there about it, if you come off. It's to protect you. I really feel like I've been around state government long enough that it's to protect the worker as much as the agency, to have folks saying that you've done anything wrong. You got anything you want to throw out to me?
Well,
or
I would
ask
just
me?
note that we've got quite a few members on our board. Of course, they're part-time public servants who,
Right.
come for board meetings and have other full-time jobs that they would fill out the outside employment form for. But as you noted before, conflicts will exist. The only thing I will note is that the ethics code talks about written recusal in advance and a supervisor providing an alternative decision maker. Here, there would be no alternative decision maker because you all have there are other voting members who can take over and vote on the matter. I would be interested in your thoughts on written recusal. What if they don't realize the conflict until in the moment when it's before them to take a vote on?
I think that happens a lot. I know at the court, it would even happen sometimes when we were in oral argument because something would get said. We're human. It looks one way when you're reading it, and then someone starts arguing or you all start discussing. It's never too late. I mean, I think it even says are on the record, which you're on the record. So as long as you get it on the record, you're covered. Because I do think it's important as things play out. I'll give you another example from the Racing Commission, my target group here today, the Bob Baffert case. Everyone heard that he had been excluded from thoroughbred racing in Kentucky, and he had a huge hearing, 10-day hearing with an administrative law judge. His attorney was not from Kentucky, he's from Oklahoma, so you can imagine I'm going to say bad things about him. And as the case was closing, after 10 days of heated argument, the attorney goes to the Keeneland sales and buys a horse that the administrative law judge owns a third of. Now, the judge had prepped for that, had been through that, state resources had been expended, huge case, high profile. He called and he did not want to get off. And I do a presentation on recusals for UK grads and talk about, that whole feeling that everyone has that we can be impartial. We're professionals. We're taught to be impartial. I've got a study that shows, we're not as impartial as we think we are. So I told him he needed to get off. To me, that one's clear because the litigant just put money in your pocket. Now, granted, you didn't have your pocket open or anything else. That horse had a hip number at Keeneland. He had no idea who was buying that horse. But as a human, he felt insulted that, his integrity would be questioned. He did instead what is allowable in the judicial world under the ABA standards. You make an acknowledgement, almost like this, but he just didn't take the other step of recusing. He acknowledged the conflict, asked the parties if they objected, and the Racing Commission rightfully objected. I did refer that attorney to the KBA. He was in Pro Hoc DJ, but no. Because to think that Bob Beffert's attorney, the best trainer in the world, didn't know whose horse he was buying, I find a bit hard to believe. But that's one just to show you that, circumstances happen. He had no interest in that at all. And I think he was very rightfully upset that that had occurred after so much state effort had been made on that. Oh, yeah. Even bouncing. I made this one try to catch your attention. I was hopeful with that one. We are really looking at conduct that looks like quid pro quos. We were allowing people to do inspections in our many of our cabinets. And I don't want someone doing an inspection when they're negotiating to go out and have a consultant job. And, that's one of the things that we're trying to ensure, that the actions of state workers are for the benefit of the public. You've already spoken about outside employment. We used to be in charge of that, but your agency knows more what a conflict is than we do with what you do. And with this group, certainly there's going to be other employment and other things that you're involved in. The only thing we look for with that is just not using state resources for that employment. Being sure that and the same thing with political. The state has rules about that. We just look to make sure that you're not campaigning on state time, those sorts of things. And then lastly, it's in our code. I didn't put the one up about it, but even private and pre-interests in our correctional facilities, those are problematic. State time and intimidating people, the overreach there. Certainly that's not state work to do that. So we have quite a lot of cases out of the corrections arena that you may have been reading about a bit. Some of the last ones I did want to mention, confidential information. That's so big now. I know in your area, that's such a big area. At the Supreme Court, when I was started as clerk, we put our public opinions up because all of the identifiers were in that case file, names and socials, and you have the same issues with that. So we specifically can send to the Attorney General if you divulge confidential information. And we did have a case like that where I think it was in housing. They had 37,000 names of licensees that he gave his wife, and she tried to get business from them. So, of course, he was fired and sanctioned by us too for $10,000 because people are required to give us that information for specific purposes. So that's, I think, a new duty that all of us as stewards of information within the Commonwealth have had to deal with. And then obviously, you wouldn't think it, but we do have people that steal state funds. We have a person right now that even stole some of our KECC funds, which is our charity. But you see that with conferences sometimes and things like that. That'll also go to the Attorney General And then the self-dealing cases, where you are making sure that business comes to your family or yourself, or you're sending leases or grants. If you have conflicts on these, it can happen. That's when you need to recuse. There are some exceptions on there, but the self-dealing cases are out there as well. I brought my tip jar today for additional compensation. No. Believe it or not, the circuit clerks used to do your driver's license, so it's been taken over. And someone from Louisville called me because one of the guys that was doing the driver's license had a tip jar out, and it said, you know, tips for good. I should have put for good service. So his supervisor called me and said, go get that tip jar. Well, they went out and he put tips for lunch. So it took 2 rounds before we got that broken. But and that kind of leads into gifts. And I don't know if that's problematic with some of the other positions they may have or not. But for us, anything over $25, that's a gift, and it can be more than just money. It can be loans or whatever. It's not anything from your family. It's not anything you paid face value for, campaign contributions. And the funny one to me, specific carve out, a ticket to a sporting event if face value is paid. So you can go to your favorite college basketball game as long as you're paying the face value on it, the one carve out that we've got. But with gifts, the part of it that makes it actually easy is it has to be from someone who is a prohibited source, as we call it. And that means somebody that's trying to do business with this agency. Someone that's trying to get a grant or get a lease, or you regulate them, or you're involved in litigation with or against them. They have to be trying to influence this agency. So it's not often as bad as it sounds. I know at the Supreme Court I had to return poinsettias, though that was not popular. You can either return it, pay for it, donate it to charity, or you can destroy it. And we tried to figure out what that was. I guess that was food. Maybe that's food if you need to destroy something. And then you've already talked about outside employment, so I'll pop through that one. And then will that impact them at all either?
So for leaving state service, yes, we have them file the statement of financial disclosure upon them no longer being a board member. And then I think that your memo or brochure on leaving state service would also apply as officers, because they are officers.
Right. Before you leave state service, again, I'm back to the folks that seem to be going into consulting after they've worked, you know, for an agency. Once you start your negotiations with that group, you need to let Todd know and let the chair know here, because the overlap between whether you are still working for the Commonwealth of Kentucky or you've already taken on the close of your post-employment office are often kind of blurred. And this is a big problem in some of our agencies right now. I've consulted with a bunch of them because when folks are going to consulting agencies and they have been the ones that have been doing the investigations or whatever, it taints it for the whole agency. If you're going to higher ed or another governmental entity from here, no limitations. And then all public servants are prohibited from 1 year coming back and lobbying here on matters that they were involved with. Just give you that one. Because officers cannot take employment compensation or economic benefit from prohibited sources. for 1 year. So a lot of folks in state government can't go to work for those agencies that the corporations that they've been dealing with. There are exceptions, and I would think most of us here, you can use your professional degree. You can return to your former occupation. You just can't lobby the agency.
Could we pause just a second? And I'd like to see if there are any questions or scenarios or queries that have this presentation may have prompted so far. I just want to tap into your thinking so we can see where we might need to go
Yeah.
next. Yes, Steve.
No, this, not in the same category as some of the others, but as former superintendents, we have 4 here on the board. We have people in our communities ask us to write letters of recommendations for a teaching job in our communities. And I didn't know whether that would be some kind of, like using our position to try to help somebody get a job, or how does that look, and what should we do? That happens a lot for me. I get a lot of requests.
I'll bet it does. How do you feel about that, Mr. Allen?
Initial reaction would be that you can provide a letter of recommendation that provides facts. You actually know the person, right? You can speak to their character, to their work characteristics, but it should be in your personal capacity, not in your capacity as a Kentucky Board of Education member.
Yeah,
How'd I do?
And
not for someone applying for a job at the agency.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's
I
just
think
local
as
school
long as
district.
it's local, like
Yeah.
your county, and just sign your name to it. We've even got, if someone that you all had retained as a vendor, you can give a real brief, yes, we used him, yes, we've done this, but you can't endorse. But on that level, you're not endorsing as a board member here. You're just saying your dealings with them. Yeah, I think that's good.
Paul?
Thank you.
Yeah,
So how are you?
good.
Good. Well, I don't know that I'm an attorney, small town country
Yeah.
lawyer. I don't know that I can comply with this. In the sense it says that question 12, if during the reporting period you or your spouse held any fiduciary position, executor, trustee, broker, attorney at law to a corporation or public entity, list your spouse's position and the name and address of all the persons. Well, when you handle an escrow account, you're doing that for all these people. You're acting as a fiduciary.
Yeah, you are.
Okay, see,
Yeah, I see where you're
you see
going.
my point.
I will tell you, nobody's ever done that,
But you see-
he's a first
but-
because, yeah, we have lots of attorneys and they don't list
They
it.
don't that, but I'm a fiduciary
Yeah,
and I have that responsibility. And I was filling this out with my secretary and she gets that question, she says, Mr. Long, you can't do this. She says, you can't be on that board. And
you can be on the board.
Well,
but-
I don't know. And then it wants to know anybody that paid me more than $1,000.
What? I'm not,
Huh?
Is it-
You know what it says?
I don't know if I have it. in front of
It says provide the name and
me. Did
address
you fill one
of
out?
all,
Okay.
it says provide the names and addresses of all sources of gross income exceeding $1,000 from any one source to your spouse or dependent child, which has not been reported. So every client that paid me more than $1,000, I have to provide that information.
I think you can just put down your law firm, don't you? Yeah. I think,
I trust you,
yeah,
but there's some prosecutors I don't trust.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let me verify and get back to you because we have had other
I know,
attorneys and they
And it's,
don't.
and it
And I haven't
says
got
that,
it in front of me, so I
I
don't even know
understand
what it
that.
says.
I know I'm getting you
Yeah.
cold on this.
No, that's good.
But that one, and because I'm late with filing my report, because I said, I'm filing this under oath. I'm saying I'm right.
Right.
And it says anything over $10,000 that I own in an investment or something. Is that every stock that I own that's over $10,000?
What most people do on that is just a general like listing. They don't specify. Do you have separate ones or are they in a fund?
No, I have separate ones.
Okay.
And I mean, Look, I have no
Yeah, I
problem
put
with the
the
request.
separate down. I think you have to put the separate.
I have no
ones
problem
down.
with the request. Don't
He
get me
has
wrong.
better.
Huh?
You have better stock than we do.
Yeah,
Writing
I mean-
deferred comp's not hard.
Well, my son, who is my investment person, we try to limit it to 10 to 15, 20,000 in a bunch, so you don't get,
Mhm.
that's the reason. So I've got a bunch of them. And I mean, I don't mind giving a financial statement, but all of a sudden, when I start saying, this is my source of income, I'm putting every client I've got's name out there too.
Right.
I'm not just putting mine. And that is a.
Yeah.
Do you have a lot of retainers? Is that
Huh?
a lot of retainers or?
No, I don't retain anything. I only get paid when I get the work done.
Mhm.
Okay.
So-
That
He
avoids-
gets a lot of work done.
Yeah,
that
well,
avoids bar complaints.
so
Believe me, I
I'm
handed those out.
suggesting perhaps, Todd, we
Yeah.
set up a consultation
Yeah.
session
I
with
don't want
great.
this to have
Paul.
No, I
And-
appreciate that.
Yeah,
And
right.
really, I've looked at a lot of them and I've never seen an attorney pay that much attention to it, and perhaps they should. So yeah, we'll get together and take.
Okay.
That's fine. That's fine.
It sounds like a interesting frontier
Yeah.
that might not be.
Unintended
Uh,
consequences is what it sounds
right,
like, yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So other questions? Because I think, it's pretty clear that you want to avoid any appearance of impropriety with regard to our ethical responsibilities. And I would also encourage you to, if it even occurs to you, ask Todd.
Yeah.
And he can help us frame further inquiry or help us inform the resolution of the question.
I was just going
Mike.
to ask, I filled it out, but then I possibly have some employment after I've completed it. So do you
Every year.
redo
Are you talking about the statement of financial
Yes.
disclosure or the outside employment request?
outside employment?
So your outside employment request should be for every outside employer that you have. If you have 3, then there should be 3 forms that
Right,
we
but at the
take into
time, there
consideration.
was none. Now, if I have a new one, do I?
Resubmit. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll have to get with you, Todd.
Good practical questions, and then there will be some inquiries and queries that are just that are philosophical, but they are important too. So this session is to really just kind of open us to thinking about the ethical requirements as we go about our day-to-day business. It's not intended to put shackles on us or have us feel constrained in any way, but just to kind of help us understand how to resolve some of the questions, and I guess get sensitized to raising those questions with ourselves. And as I said, with Todd, and he will know when we need to consult with Susan. But these are important filters that we should bring to our deliberations.
Chair
on a
Robinson,
regular
I would
basis.
also note that, a lot of the potential conflicts for board members, we have attempted to avoid those types of conflicts by the board having policies through its regulations for the commissioner and staff to make decisions that never come to this board. So if you think about contracts and things of that nature, there are very few that this board actually approves. Instead, they're being approved, through the commissioner or through staff at the department. And there is some strategy behind that so that individual matters aren't coming before the board. Instead, the board sets the policy of how those matters will be decided by staff and the commissioner.
Thank you. Randy, please.
Just one follow-up question to Mike's in there. If you're listed as an LLC, you're doing multiple different things. So you don't have to list, I guess my question is really going back to Mr. Long. If your law firm or the other's an LLC, you're not
That's
listing
exactly it.
every one. You're listing the LLC and that it's doing that particular business. And because you could have $1,000 coming here and $1,000
That's
coming
right.
there,
Right.
and you're not keeping track of each and every one of those, at least the last time. I mean,
Maybe
you
the
list
way-
your major ones.
Yeah,
but
maybe
not
the way
every
yours
minor.
is configured. We'll circle back on that. That's
Yeah.
a good point. But yeah, we like to think that the ethics code actually protects you. You know, it protects you from challenges from other people, and it's kind of a nice baseline that's out there. You can always go above.
Well, that's a very good way to sum up a thinking about that. It is our interests and the interests of those that we serve that we want to be sure we are stepping out with a lot of confidence, and they can be confident we're acting in the public's interest. Thank you, Susan.
Well, thank you. A
Yes,
pleasure.
it's been
Thank
great.
you all for what you do.
Yes.
Schedule. We'll take a short break and reconvene at 2:15 in case we do have anyone that is coming for public comment. We had advertised the time.
Could we move to the action
We
discussion?
can, absolutely, yes.
And
And then come back.
and
to
then come
public
back
comment.
to.
That's perfect. I just want to make sure in
Yes.
case we have anyone come later.
I'm just trying to. So if you will, board, bear with me. I'd like to move to the action discussion items. These items have to do with our goals and priorities for our work as we prepare to engage during the next legislative session, and our work as we prepare to engage with our commissioner on focusing and helping to prioritize the work of his office and the agency. So first, I'd like to ask you to look at our proposed goals and legislative priorities. Pardon me. And the first goals we will look at are our own, the Kentucky Board goals to foster vibrant student learning experiences, to advance education innovation and excellence, and to cultivate collaborative partnerships. Are there questions and further discussion regarding the goals for KBE for 2025? Are you ready for the question? Oh, Julie.
I was just going to make the comment that I appreciate how we are now, we make sure everything is tying back to the United We Learn, and that it's all the common message, consistency, we have that goal. And personally, I appreciate the goal number 3, because we can't accomplish goals 1 and 2 without 3.
Well, you know, everybody, we all are part of this engine. And if we want this engine running and running at high efficiency, we've got to make sure we've got our energy directed and governed by our goals. So if you find this congruent with the work that we said we're committed to accomplish, I'll call the question. All those in favor of adopting the 24-25 KBE goals, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no.
So we need a motion and a second.
Oh, moving right along. Julie, how about a motion?
I'll make the motion.
All right, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. I will call the vote again. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Meredith.
And Brian is here to sort of give an overview of the legislative priorities before we begin that discussion.
Great. Brian, would you come forward?
As he makes his way up, Chair Robinson, I would just note, I appreciate Julie's commentary on the nature of the goals. We could have dozens of goals. We could get really granular. We could, dig into the weeds in terms of what those goals are. But as a board, we've consistently over the last 7 years really talked about what is it that we want to accomplish together. And that focus has been around United We Learn, around innovation, and we've really stepped up the conversation around collaborative partnerships. So I really do think they speak to what it is that we're trying to accomplish in broad strokes.
Thank you, Vice Chair Young. Brian, we're heading into a legislative session.
Yes. So this is the time of year that the board approves the legislative priorities. Typically, this has been, in my time here, this has been for the upcoming session. So the priorities that you have before you are really more of a biennial view, right? So you're going to see some things on here that look more like things we will see during the budget session in 26. And that's intentional because as that timeline has accelerated over the past couple of cycles, we wanted to make sure that we're able to inform legislators earlier about what some of the upcoming additional budget requests will be as they start to plan that out, really starting early next year. So just want to make sure that you all are aware that this is a little more of a long-term view. I think that's great. I think it'll be very helpful for the commissioner and myself and other members of the leadership team, as we engage with the General Assembly over the next 6-8 months, because really by the time we get done with the 25 session, the budget process will have already started. So it's really important, especially for some of these bigger items, it's really important that we are able to start talking about those sooner rather than later. And with that, I'll just kind of open it up if there's any questions about any specific items. And Chair, I don't know if you wanted to go through each one individually.
So I do want to be clear that I want to make sure the board is clear. These priorities come from our work, our limited discussion, and they are fully reflective of what our best thinking at this point as to strategic priorities heading into a non-budget session, but preparing for the budget session to follow.
Yes.
Okay. Please.
I think that answered my question. This, we will have like we had in the past when we get to the budgetary part.
Oh, sure.
Top five.
Yeah. And that'll be part of the, and that's part of the work with the state budget office and the governor's office and rolling that out. But the problem is that timeline hasn't really accelerated along to really align with what the General Assembly is now doing. So we wanted to be sure that we can start having some preliminary conversations earlier. But yes, eventually there will be a list for you all to kind of prioritize as we move forward. So
it's just, I mean, the two committees that I chair, I mean, there's going to be additional specific item requests that's going to be in those two categories.
Sure.
Just wanted clarification.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Robinson. A good example of looking at years in advance, if you look at number 5, one of the things that we've been talking with some of our advisory councils is looking into how district facilities are funded. And that's going to take a process. It's going to take some time. So, one of the things that we want to do as a board and also with KDE is, and with our KDE, our advisory councils, I've talked a little bit, and I won't mention which particular advisory council, to say, well, what are some pathways that we can do to modernize the funding of district facilities? I think it's time that we look into that. But as we all know, when you look at district facilities, that's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in one session. It may not happen in 2 sessions. We could hope that maybe in 3 or 4 sessions that we could get to the point where we're really looking at how facilities are funded within the schools and lobbying with legislators and working with legislators. So, but on the other hand, too, there's some things that are coming up that maybe we can work with the legislature about with Numeracy Counts Act, professional development. So there's some short-term and there's also some long-term type goals here if you'll look at these. And going with Dr. Poe's point, there will be some ABRs that'll come up that we'll have to ask specifically for funding and amounts.
Yeah, and there'll be ABRs related to things on here. The KETS bullet point is a good example of one that we just need to start talking about now because it's going to be a big number. And so we really need to be educating the assembly now about what are the needs related to KETS, why do we need this funding, and start giving them some preliminary numbers. But then to Dr. Poe's point, we will have an ABR related to that down the road. So it's just sort of starting to get that process started a little earlier.
Yes, please, Mike.
One other thing I'd like to mention, I know it's been in the last 2 budgets, but the kindergarten funding, we need to, I don't know if that's in the preschool discussion, but to get that codified, because I know all the superintendents at the district level, that money's there, but it's still kind of hard to make budgetary decisions when you're waiting every budget cycle to make sure that the kindergarten funding's there. So I'm sure you're aware of that, but I think that is something we can't forget.
it doesn't hurt to capture it in that language anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, please.
Couple things. One is, I don't know if we need to have anything about school safety in any of this. I think that's something that certainly is ever mindful. Certainly we need to work with legislature, whether it's funding or, regulatory. I think keeping that on our forefront helps school districts keep that in the front of their minds. And then the other thing I was going to mention, it's in here, but I think educator recruitment is going to be such a critical aspect of what we're doing moving forward with K-12 in Kentucky. I had a chance to speak to Dr. Fletcher and Dr. Robinson a little bit about this, but it mentions teacher scholarships in here, but we do have the Work Ready Kentucky Scholarship Program that education is not currently in legislation to be a part of that scholarship. And we could specifically target that one. Like I say, I don't know if it needs to be changed here because it's scholarships are in here. But I think from a legislative perspective, it is a little different. That is an existing one that we're talking about modifying.
That's a great point. And that's something we've certainly talked about a little bit since my time here. Obviously, coming from the post-secondary world, I was aware of the Work Ready Scholarship and kind of what it covers and doesn't cover. Just for the others' awareness, in case you don't know, the existing teacher scholarship is one of the only ones that's a conversion, right? So it's not just a typical scholarship. It converts to a loan if you don't meet the parameters of the scholarship. So that's something else we've talked about trying to get kind of rectified, is to bring it more into line with Work Ready, which is just a straight scholarship. So if you get Work Ready to get, say, your nursing degree, there's no requirement for you to practice in Kentucky for the same number of years or for any time frame. So, we have a number of colleges that are on borders. So if you're down in Owensboro or Henderson, you can go across the river right after you get right after using Work Ready. So that's another thing we've talked about trying to get fixed is, addressing those issues within the teacher scholarships. But it's a great point, and certainly something I'm happy to talk about addressing.
Brian and Chair, I wonder if we might be able to capture these under 2 by changing the language to secure additional funding for key initiatives such as add bullets around codifying full-day kindergarten funding, school safety, and teacher recruitment and Work Ready, or that one actually could be a subheading of the scholarships. But we might consider this a growing list pre-ABR of the kinds of things and capture it over the course of the next year or so.
Thank you. That is a very helpful suggestion, and we do want to keep these ideas going, but we also want to be clear that we have some priorities. We know the general areas that we want to focus our energy, refine our thinking, and recognize every opportunity to advance the cause. And this helps to guide the work that we do now, getting ready for the 25 session. And as soon as 25 opens, you're getting ready for 26. So, I mean, we've learned that the hard way. And if we don't start with something that guides our work now, then we find ourselves kind of looking like deer in the headlights when it's time to do the APR prioritization. So we're really just trying to give ourselves some scaffolding to begin our strategic thinking and our tactical thinking about where our opportunities may arise or may materialize. Yes, Diane.
Okay, just one question. This may not be appropriate to ask at this time, but I know a lot of legislators informally, and they'll say, well, Diane, come on over and talk with me. So is this what I would take as I go to actually discuss what we're about and what we're trying to do?
This is the tool that we are going to be using right now, and we'll be bringing it back and refining it and coming back with more information. We'll be sharing intelligence as we engage with our colleagues and our constituents, and all in the interest of our students. That is the badge that we can have, and that's a really important question.
It's an instructive question too, especially with new members. take Brian with you or call Brian first. If he knows who you're meeting with, he might even be able to take the talking points and customize those depending on who the legislator is. So that's very helpful. And then, just remember when you're in those sessions, you're speaking as one member of a larger board, but it's always helpful if they invite us in to have these kinds of conversations.
Yeah, the more we can talk about all these priorities, the better. I mean, you can't really talk about them too much when it comes to the annex. So,
Because I think I mentioned that to you before about wanting to do that.
Well, it's
and that's
our
exactly what
branding
they're for,
message,
is to help guide those conversations. And of course, the commissioner and I and others will take them with us whenever we have meetings. It's a great way to educate the folks over there on kind of where the board is, where the department is, kind of. And again, I think it's going to be really helpful for them to see kind of what you all are thinking about as that framework for the biennium, really. And so I think it'll be good for everybody.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, please.
Question. These in Kentucky, our desire is to make education equal for all.
Equitable.
Huh? What'd you say, Diane?
Equitable.
Equitable.
I'll never be equal.
But with the discrepancies in salaries from one school district to the other, you will never have the equitable, I'll use your word, education. I mean, when you can go from one county to the other, and you're talking $15,000, $20,000 more. I mean, I'm not a teacher. I'm a business person. I'm a lawyer. You go where the money is. So we're leaving our counties who have less income, sometimes with less quality teachers, because the good teachers are going to the higher paying jobs. And that affects and I'm a rural Kentuckian, okay? I'm rural Kentucky. That affects rural Kentucky more than it affects anyone else. This is not about Louisville or Lexington or Northern Kentucky. It's about these kids out in rural Kentucky that our teachers are not being paid. Now, it's not our fault.
Right.
It's not the legislature's fault. I'm not blaming either source, okay? But everybody says, well, it's all got to be local. All local is not good.
And you've really hit on one of the things that we've wrestled with as a board over the last 4 years, in that we don't have any control over local board decision-making around compensation. So we've stepped back, Paul, to think about it as long as we're lobbying for an increase in the school funding at the state level, the SEEK formula, and then we defer to local control in terms of how they use those additional SEEK funds. But it always does kind of leave us frustrated, as it does the General Assembly too, to think about additional funding going to school districts, and the number one priority might not be teacher compensation. But as you pointed out, it's a pretty layered and complex issue about how to get dollars into a teacher's paycheck.
Yes.
And I
I don't
suspect.
have an answer.
Right. But I appreciate you bringing the question
yes.
to the fore, because it is an important question. And
If I may make one other comment.
yes, please.
And a lot of time, it's not just Kentucky districts.
Yeah.
Go across state borders.
Oh, yes.
Good point.
If we look across the state border and, especially I'll just select the southern border, Tennessee with the minimum teacher salary of $50,000. It's hard to recruit folks when you've got, now I will say that the General Assembly made an investment. We're able to increase teacher salaries, and we're able to increase other areas, and we're thankful for that. So as the more and more that we can add to not only teacher salaries, but bus driver salaries, we can add to cooks, we can add to our classified and certified, I think is very, very important. But not only when we look at inside our Commonwealth, but also in comparisons with outside our Commonwealth. And Dr. Poe, Mr. Borchers, both can really talk about that Cincinnati competition area. Then also too with local businesses. When you have large companies that move in, how are you competitive with your drivers versus the others? So again, compensation plays a major role, and it's a very intricate, delicate topic on how do you handle SEEK funding to do that. And if I may make one more comment before I turn it over, I want to thank Dr. Perry. We've had several meetings already with legislators, and he does a pivotal and an important role of setting up those meetings. And anytime that I walk into a meeting, there's already a relationship built with Dr. Perry. So I want to thank him for that, for the work that he's doing to help with those relationships. So it makes it easier for the commissioner to walk in and talk to people because there's already a relationship there. So thank you, Dr. Perry, for that.
Thank you.
Yes, Randy, please.
In relationship to the thing of salary, I mean, I totally agree. You know, last year we were looking at this KASA, KASS, all the K groups. And, you know, the question that I brought up last year, and I think still valid, is we have not increased the Kentucky minimum teacher salary since like 1980. That's published on our website. So I know we had the debate in the legislature about beginning salaries. Let's do it local and all that. And we're not going to change that. But we should have increased the Kentucky minimum teacher salary since the 1980s. Or it's non-effective because it's like $20,000 or something like that. We worked in the thing to get salaries up at KDE the other year. I think somewhere along the line, we should be recommending at least to address this issue, a minimum salary schedule that we used to always have, because as superintendents, that's where you had to go. It did direct some of that local funding into those teacher salaries in places that didn't, or required some boards to take the 4% increase where they chose not to because they didn't meet the minimum teacher salary. So I think, you know, that should be something we should be looking at, because I think it's an embarrassment when you get on our website and you're a surrounding teacher coming into Kentucky and you look up the Kentucky teacher salary schedule and it says $20,000 or so for a starting teacher salary. That's just an embarrassment, you know.
Whoa.
And so you're talking about that remnant thing, the old
Kentucky-
schedule.
Yeah,
There's a
Yeah.
Kentucky
Does that
minimum
thing still
teacher
even
salary.
need to exist?
yeah.
That's on our
right,
website
right.
is the Kentucky.
It has to
minimum.
exist? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
And I'm just saying it needs to be updated.
Which we really don't
Yeah,
have
it
anything to
needs-
do with.
Right, right.
Well, we do, no, I disagree with that. We do have, because if we update it to Kentucky minimum teacher salary schedule, that is what they have to follow. That's there. They have to meet that minimum teacher salary schedule still even today under the SEEK. Now, we may not be the ones who do the final say. We might have to take it back to the legislature or wherever. But it is a living, breathing document still today, or at least that's what I was told when I called last year asking, you know, for that information, because I was looking at KASA's literature where they were adopting.
Yeah.
the
I chaired
others,
that committee, yeah.
And that salary schedule is still there, or I was told it's still there, and I saw it, so I know it's there.
I'm
But
looking for it
it's
now.
what everybody still has to follow, and there's a KRS on that. Look into that.
So we're going to look into that, but Randy, thanks for bringing that point up. I'm going to ask the board to please offer a motion regarding these legislative priorities for the short session, getting us ready for the longer session and the real money talk, and giving us an opportunity to refine our tactical approaches to these larger issues. And we'll be adding more intelligence to all of this as we go along. So could I have a motion to approve this draft as our beginning statement of the legislative priorities?
Some additional language that I've added, so if we want to review that once there's a motion.
Yes, thank you.
And then when you send it.
Recognizing the additional language that Vice Chair Young suggested a few minutes ago.
So moved, Diane Woods.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Mike. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you so much. Commissioner Dr. Perry, we appreciate you getting us off to a rolling start regarding our engagement with the General Assembly. Included in today's board agenda is a dedicated public commitment segment. This segment is limited to 10 speakers at a minimum of 3 minutes each. If there are multiple members of an organization, we encourage the membership of that group to select one person for public comment. Do we have anyone signed up for public comment? All right, thank you so much. Now we'll turn to our next set of goals, which would be the commissioner goals, and begin the discussion of the commissioners, our commissioner's first evaluation in this position. So let me bring your attention to the material in the portal. The 24-25
Evaluation will actually be next October.
Yes, the evaluation will be next October based on goals that we articulate today. And an evaluation plan, as well as the goals themselves, is also included in the material that I would like to bring to the board's attention at this point. So as with the board's goals, I think you would see the alignment of the work, given the board's vision and ambitions, given the commissioner selection process, and now given the responsibility to refine these expectations regarding a measurable accountability system for us all, we are trying to be fully aligned. The floor is now open for discussion of the commissioner goals.
Do we want Robbie to say anything about before we discuss?
That might be nice. He may be speechless.
Well, when we were looking at these goals, there was no surprises. As we went through the interview process, it was very clear what the board was looking for in a commissioner. Everything from building relationships with our communities, with our legislators, with our teachers, with our superintendents, with our board members. That was obvious throughout the interview process that building relationships was a strong part of the expectation of this group. And you still selected me. But you'll see that in goal 3. You'll see that in goal 3, as a matter of fact. And then also, too, the questions. I remember the questions going through the process of the Kentucky United We Learn. When we talk about vibrant learning, when we talk about innovations and assessment in other areas, when we talk about collaboration with communities, which make the first two goals possible, it was very evident that that should be in my evaluation. Also, too, in starting out the accountability system. We talked about having an accountability system that is meaningful to all of our learners, and we really reached that goal with a moonshot. That was a lot of questions within the interview process. Then also, too, the goal 4, and we've started talking about goal 4 already. You're looking at the workforce issues. As a matter of fact, Board Member Pate and I, we've already talked about the 2x2 scholarships and other opportunities of workforce scholarship as it relates to teaching, but also, too, what are some other ideas as we move forward? Everyone at this table is very familiar with the chronic absenteeism campaign. We're going to step that up and do another campaign next year, and it's going to be revolving around teacher recruitment and also retainment, because I think that's just as important as the recruitment is these days. But also, too, at the end there, you'll talk about collaborative relationships with the members of the General Assembly. Again, you can only accomplish these with a strong team that's surrounding around you. And again, just like I emphasized with Dr. Perry earlier, there's so many members across the leadership group that are helping with these goals already. But there were no surprises. So as it goes forward, it only makes sense that these would be part of the goals for the commissioner as we move forward. So, Dr. Pro, thank you for that opportunity to express that. And again, I fully understand the goals that are there.
Thank you, Dr. Fletcher. Further comment? Yes, Julie.
Just one on goal number 3. I think there's a stakeholder group missing. Students.
Say a little bit louder.
Said on goal number 3, I think we have a stakeholder group missing, and that's students.
Parents.
Students.
Oh,
We got families.
Oh, I see family. Okay, students. I think that's fully embraced. Thank you. Thank you, Julie, for pointing that out.
Oh, I have a question.
Yes.
A comment. Next year, when we look at actually do the evaluation or whatever we're going to call it at that time for the commissioner. Are we going to be looking at these in any kind of priority area? Are they to be done together, and syncly together, all 5
Yeah, in
of
the
these
past, we
goals?
have not weighted them.
We have not.
We've not weighted them in the past.
We have not. But, I mean, Commissioner, how are you feeling about that?
Well, I look forward to the opportunity for the self-reflection. For example, if you look at the communication plan, those goals lead back to the symbolic leadership, the cultural leadership, educational leadership, human leadership, and technical leadership. So as far as weighting one over the other, I think all are equally important. So unless the board would see otherwise, I think that all should be of equal weight, if you will.
And we have not used a quantitative approach in the past.
Mhm.
It's been fully qualitative. And
Well, that makes sense because
the recommendation now is. we
yeah,
will
I don't know
continue
how
to
you.
do So,
I don't think you could fairly do it that way.
Yeah.
Or we would be looking at what we really are expecting
Right,
out of the
right.
commissioner if we didn't look at it holistically.
correct.
Right. We've tried to, and I think the board has been, the consensus has been very, very high among the board members as we bring the data back. But it is an effort in qualitative analysis, because I've been impressed with how much board input we get using the instruments, the tools that we're using. So,
Well, to me, like goal 3 would encompass all the other goals. You can't do this without doing goal 3. She's already gone, my backup. Okay.
And that was the biggest thing that I wanted to ask the chairman, or the commissioners. This is such a broad job. But if there are things going into this year that are just going to dominate the time, and I've been in this position when the legislative work has been the most important thing that you had to do, and it was going to be 50% of your job that year. So, I wanted my board to know going into that, hey, you're probably not going to see me on campus as much, and they're not going to be this. So I just wanted to make sure you felt comfortable with not having some kind of a weighting here, because if Frankfurt was going to be 33% of the job, then you wouldn't want that to only be a 5%, kind of item. Yeah. But if you feel good about that, then
I think all are equally important, but you're correct. And it depends on the time of year.
Mm-hmm.
For example, right now, as coming in, the accountability system, the new accountability system is garnering a lot of time, but also too finding time to make sure you build those relationships with legislators and also visiting schools. I've visited a lot of schools in Western Kentucky and Central Kentucky, and as a matter of fact, I've got a few more scheduled in the next couple of weeks. But I appreciate the thoughts there, but I believe that as we move forward and we look at all 5, I'm sure there'll be some growth needed from the commissioner after 1 year to say, okay, Dr. Fletcher, we feel like you've done a great job in this area. Keep it up. But we'd like to see a little more concentration in that area, and I'm perfectly fine with that.
this is to help guide our learning as a board, and as we support the commissioner in doing this work. Actually, I want to acknowledge that working with the commissioner, one thing that has happened for me is a growing sense of, yeah, this is really, really hard, but it is all worth doing. I feel as though this is the work that is so worth whatever effort, talents, energy, resources, thinking. This is the work that inspires us and helps us build for the future. If there are no further questions, then I'm going to ask the board to approve a motion, approve the commissioner's goals for 24-25, with the understanding that we have the infrastructure to support an evaluation system based on the data collection that we will be doing, and the guidance that we will be giving each other as we approach fulfillment of these goals. So with that, I would ask for a motion.
That motion.
Okay, Steve
Second.
Trimble, thank you. Oh, thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Then I'll put the question. All in favor of approving the commissioner goals, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Thank you so much, board. We've accomplished a lot this early afternoon. And now we'll go into the final matter.
We do need to approve the evaluation. It's the next
Oh.
item.
You know, I meant to include that in the motion and I failed to say it. You also have the material for the evaluation and communications plan that will help to scaffold the evaluation based on the goals we've just adopted. Any discussion? I mean, we've talked about the benefits or not of prioritization rather than approaching this holistically. I'm not going to say that this is not a kind of check the box evaluation system. It does require the analytics of those who are really, really good with qualitative data, and we have such a resource, thank goodness. And it has been beneficial. So speaking from the chair, I'll just ask your indulgence as I share that little bit of information and now ask for a motion to approve these materials.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, great. The motion is on the table to approve the materials to support the commissioner's evaluation system. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We did it. Thank you so much. The board has been really attentive and I think we've gotten a lot accomplished, which brings us
We have consent and then the resolution. Consent next. No.
I'm sorry. Okay, all right, I got it. We'll go to the consent agenda. And we have under the consent agenda, a hearing officer's report, a litigation report, the 24-25 tax rates levied, KDE Associate Commissioner Matt Ross and KDE Division Director Chade Ritter are here if you have questions about that. The whole school, whole community, whole child subcommittee appointments. This item, the consent agenda, requires a vote. It consists of items that the staff feel have identified as non-controversial and routine in nature. This item has been distributed to you in advance to allow time for your review. So I'm going to ask if any members wish to remove any item from the consent agenda and put it on the regular discussion agenda that we will address tomorrow.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'll have to admit, I didn't see anything in there that I wanted to pull out, but there was a lot of things in there I didn't necessarily understand. In regard to the tax levied, is that just kind of a report of how those have been levied?
Yes.
Nothing for us to consider on any.
It is no decision based on, we have to approve that it's in and the report has been given to us, right? Meredith, do you have further information?
That's correct. And if you would like to discuss the item, we will need to pull it. So we can't have any formal questions on any of the items that are on consent, but we're happy to pull the item and have a presentation tomorrow from Matt's team, if that would be helpful.
I have no question.
Thanks, Dr. P. That's all.
We'll talk about it over dinner. How about that? Okay. If no items are moved, then I'm going to ask the board to entertain a motion to approve all the items on the consent agenda.
So much.
Thank you, Mike. Second?
Second.
Yes, Julie. We have a motion and a second. I'll put the question. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Boy, now is it time?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, board, for helping me get through this agenda in an expeditious manner, because I know you want to, we want to include everyone in the discussion of the final item on today's agenda, which is an item regarding a resolution I would like the board to consider relative to Amendment 2 and the implications for the funding of Kentucky's common schools. Amendment 2 is on the ballot. Our colleagues, our neighbors, our friends, the citizens of Kentucky will consider this matter beginning in just a few weeks until the results come in on November 5th. It's important to think about what Amendment 2 means. Amendment 2 eliminates the prohibition of the General Assembly from passing laws targeting specific areas of the state. Amendment 2 eliminates the prohibition of the legislature from indirect enactment of laws targeting areas of the state. Amendment 2 eliminates the requirement that taxes can only be collected for public purposes. It eliminates the requirement that the legislature is responsible for establishing an efficient system of public schools. Amendment 2 removes the prohibition regarding the collection of taxation for funding of the common schools. Amendment 2 eliminates the prohibition regarding public education funds from being used for church, sectarian, or denominational schools. Amendment 2 does all of those things. But Amendment 2 has an immediate impact and implication on our work, which is the support of public funds for the exclusive funding of our system of common schools. We, like the Kentucky Supreme Court, recognize that education is a fundamental right in Kentucky. As we begin our discussion, I am reminded of a passage from the U.S. Supreme Court case Brown v. Board of Education, which was later referenced in the Kentucky Supreme Court case that was mentioned earlier, Rose v. Council for Better Education. The passage reads, education is perhaps the most important function of state and local governments. Compulsory school attendance and the great expenditures of education both demonstrate our recognition of the importance of education to our democratic society. It is required in the performance of our most basic responsibilities, I would add, such as not just service in the armed forces, but service in the workforce and service as an informed public citizen. It is doubtful that any child may responsibly be expected to succeed in life if he is denied the opportunity of an education. Such an opportunity where the state has undertaken to provide it is a right that must be available to all on equal terms. The framers of Kentucky's Constitution understood the importance of free public education for all children, and that the public education system be uniform across the state. They described our system of common schools as a system of practical equality in which the children of the rich and poor meet on a perfect level. The boys and girls of the humble mountain home stand equally high with those from the mansions of the city. There's no distinction in the common schools, but all stand on one level. Now, recognizing the importance of the common school system, the constitutional framers made clear that public funds were to be used to fund our common school system at the exclusion of all others. Our public schools, however, are challenged and wary, called upon to serve the diverse needs of students, needs exacerbated by a global pandemic, historic natural disasters, and heightened mental health challenges. Our common schools accept and welcome all, but they do so in an environment of uncertainty when it comes to adequate funding. Local school boards are forced to raise taxes locally to keep up with increasing operational costs. And most recently, our common schools grapple with the likely impacts of proposals to create and use public tax dollars to fund separate school systems, whether it is private schools or charter schools. Those schools are not required to serve all students. The proposed resolution is designed to send a clear message to support our common schools, that the KBE supports our common public schools and the use of state tax dollars to exclusively fund our school system, because we know that separate but equal is not a reality that can be realized. This resolution is not directing our constituents, our colleagues, our neighbors, how to vote. It is an opportunity to say, as a Kentucky Board of Education, that we support our common schools and want to see the dollars collected for them, directed to them, and not diverted to other pursuits when we have a system that is serving our students now that needs to serve them more, and we are insistent on being their primary advocates. Dr. Brewer, I would like for you please to read the resolution.
Resolution supporting the use of state dollars to exclusively fund the common system of public schools. Whereas, to eliminate the disparities in schooling options across the Commonwealth, the Kentucky Constitution established a common system of public schools, creating a uniform framework that ensures all public schools operate under consistent rules. Whereas the common system of public schools is designed to provide equal educational opportunities for all Kentucky children, regardless of place of residence or economic circumstances. Whereas the common public schools must be monitored by the Kentucky General Assembly to assure they are operated without waste, duplication, mismanagement, or political influence. Whereas schools outside the common system of public schools are not subject to the same accountability and transparency requirements as the common public schools in areas such as academic standards, finances, teacher qualifications, and student assessment, which can lead to inconsistencies in educational quality. Whereas it is the responsibility of the Kentucky General Assembly to adequately fund the system of common public schools, and the creation of separate systems will lead to funding inequities and operational inefficiency. Whereas using state funds to support schools outside the common system of public schools diverts essential resources from public schools, weakening their capacity to effectively serve all students. This practice will also increase segregation based on socioeconomic status, race, and religion, thereby undermining the principles of equity and inclusivity that are fundamental to our public education system. Whereas the Kentucky Board of Education is committed to ensuring that each and every Kentucky learner becomes an engaged citizen and empowered learner, prepared to lead a life filled with purpose. Whereas the Kentucky Board of Education is resolute in its position that public tax dollars should be allocated exclusively to public schools within the common system of schools. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Kentucky Board of Education opposes any legislation or policy that would allocate state dollars to fund schools outside the common system of public schools, and believes that the best way to ensure all students in Kentucky receive a high-quality education is by supporting the existing public education system. Be it further resolved that the board stands ready to work with the Kentucky General Assembly to advise on matters of education policy to elevate Kentucky's system of common schools to a national model that provides vibrant learning experiences for every student, regardless of background. And be it further resolved that the board urges the Kentucky General Assembly to prioritize investments in public education and continue to partner with the Kentucky Department of Education to support initiatives that strengthen existing public schools so that all students have access to the resources and opportunities they need to succeed.
Thank you, Dr. Brewer. Before we begin our discussion, I want to be clear that the resolution does not advocate for or against Amendment 2. KBE members in their individual capacity may express their personal views regarding Amendment 2, but that is not the point of this resolution. The board does not seek to instruct Kentuckians on how to vote. We believe they are capable of making an informed decision. Rather, this resolution reflects the board's unwavering support for our common school system as a priority, a system managed under the management and control of this board. I will now open the floor for discussion regarding this resolution. Comments? Commissioner Fletcher?
Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
So are you asking our comments about our feelings individually? Or am I speaking as a board member, or can I speak as myself?
You may speak as yourself, but I would like for you to speak regarding the resolution to support the exclusive use of public funds for our common school system.
And I think one of the statements in that, and pull me back if I'm getting off the track here, was the practice will also increase segregation based upon socioeconomic status, race, and religion. I may be the only person sitting at this table who the first 3 years of her education was in a segregated school.
No.
And I know the kind of education that we received at that school, the resources that we got. There were ones that the majority of school did not want any longer. They were books that were always written up. And, you know, I would go home crying at night with my mom. It's like, why do we have to have these nasty, dirty books? And why are we sitting on these hard benches? There's no chairs there. So I strongly support anything that is in opposition to using public dollars. I'm trying to watch my language so that I don't get messed up. Have to go see Todd. That uses public funds. There are not enough funds now. And I come from a small rural county, even after integration, and there still was not enough money. And I could see, I know people in my community that would have children, they would be able to get a voucher, but they would not have the monies to pay the other part of it. They're not going to be totally funded by a private or parochial schools as far as what I've seen. And all I'm speaking on is what I know. So I'm not saying what the board is trying to say. It's what I know. I think this would be a detriment and a step back. We're talking about accountability. Where's the accountability? We're talking about vibrant learning experiences and all the things that this board has worked on before I joined the board, and the steps that we're taking. Those things don't come cheap. There's going to be an investment of dollars. So where are the dollars going to come from? So I won't say more because I get too agitated about this. But it's the time now is for us to step up and say, let's do what we know works. All we had to do is to go to the Continuous Improvement Summit. Did I get that right?
Mm-hmm.
1,500 all across the state, not just from Jefferson County and Fayette County presenting, but keep from a lot of small districts to see how far we've come and to go back. It's just a step in the wrong direction for me.
Thank you, Diane. Julie.
So I'm going to move this closer to me. Point into the third paragraph where it's monitored by the Kentucky General Assembly to assure that they are operated without waste, duplication, mismanagement, or political influence.
Julie, can you pull the mic closer?
Try to here. Good. I think I can move that. Is that a little bit better?
Yeah, it
Okay.
is. Thank you.
So in the third paragraph, without waste, duplication, mismanagement, or political influence. What strikes me the most about this amendment that's been proposed is that there has been no plan proposed with the amendment. It's removing, I think, 9 sections, notwithstanding of our state constitution. There are no parameters put in place. We have no idea what's going to be coming down the pike with this. It goes back to if the U.S. Congress were to propose eliminating sections of the Bill of Rights without any plan of replacement of those, would we vote for something like that? It's completely unknown of what's going to happen with this amendment because there has been no plan revealed. So would we give our children, put them on a set of a path and then not give them parameters or guidelines? We wouldn't do that to our kids. Would you do that as an employer with your employees when you have a project? Just free for all. No, you give guidelines, you give parameters, you give support. We have no idea what's coming with this amendment. And I'm going to share 2 stories, which I shared at a KSBA regional meeting, because I do work with schools in other states that have charter schools, privately funded charter schools. I work with one elementary school it's a public elementary school. They start the school year with 300 students. After Christmas break, they have 500 students because 1, the charter schools have received their money and it's in their pocket and they don't have to give it up. 2, they have then kicked the children out that they no longer want. So now imagine our elementary schools. You have an elementary school, all of a sudden 200 kids influxed into your school. How do you plan staffing for that? What does that do to the culture of the school? It creates chaos for the kids who have been kicked out of the private charter schools and for the kids in public school. That's what happens when things are not done right with a plan, with unintentional consequences. Another, when it comes back to accountability and assessments. In a middle school, working with an SRO in another state, having discussions. This SRO also administers the military assessments. He had a child, didn't even come close to passing a military assessment. That child was valedictorian of his charter school. You don't know what's going to happen. And they're not held accountable with the same accountability. I work in another state where it's publicly funded charter schools. They have the same assessment and accountability as all the rest of the schools in the state. So the reason that I personally am going to vote no on this amendment is I am not willing to allow the state legislators to have complete control and not know what the plan is.
Thank you, Ms. Powell. Dr. Powell? Did you? Oh,
No.
I'm sorry. I thought I saw your hand.
I could say a
Further
lot of things,
comment?
but I'll keep it short, so I
Ah.
just support the amendment.
I want to compliment whoever drafted this. They did a very good job. They stay out of the political winds. It's very straightforward. It's whoever did it, they did an excellent job.
Dr. Brewer.
Okay, well, you did an excellent job. I'll just tell you.
It was a team effort.
Oh, good. Okay, because
Yeah.
But I agree with Paul. I think it was threading a needle to be sure that we remained as apolitical as we could on an issue that's on the ballot. But if you look carefully at the resolution, what appeals to me to Mr. Long is that it does couch in very positive terms what Dr. Robinson has described as our role as a state board to promote and support the public schools in this state and to not take any chances that we would disadvantage them in any way. So I really appreciate that too.
It's very good. It's a non-threatening.
Yeah.
The language is clear.
Yes.
We have to be careful because we do have to deal with the legislature.
We do, but
And-
we want to
and-
come with integrity.
We
And
do. And,
this
it's
is, thank you, Preston.
Hi guys. I think this mic is on. We'll see. But I just wanted to first of all personally thank Ms. Woods. I thought her sentiment was great. See, as I was born in 2008. Sorry.
Well, I
But
could be your grandma.
that was very enlightening. Yeah, yeah. But that was personally very enlightening for me to hear, and I think as a board greatly appreciate that comment. But I think the one thing that stands out to me the most, and Ms. Woods also mentioned this, what is the precedent we are putting into place if we're not making this resolution? What are we kind of implying about our thoughts on public education? Like the main goal of the board has always been to be support public schools, support public education. What are we kind of saying if we don't pass this resolution and kind of just letting it fall through the cracks?
Or if we say nothing.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Mhm.
Well, I appreciate Preston because you have now framed the point of the matter. This is our job, and we see an imminent threat to the institution to which we have committed public service. Thank you.
One of the things that I want to point out in this resolution is the board's also acknowledging that we worked in partnership with the General Assembly in the past. There's been a lot of legislation that has passed that we've worked together on, very good legislation, and also to the desire of this board to work with the state legislature as we move forward. But I agree with Mr. Graham. If we say nothing, then we're not doing our jobs. It is paramount as champions for public education at this table that we talk about public dollars for public education. And again, reemphasizing what Board Member Powell said, basically the guardrails are removed. As a voter, I like to know what I'm voting for. I'd like to know the parameters. I like to know the issue. When I look at a person or an amendment, I like to know which way we're going. Unfortunately, this amendment opens the gates. There's questions about accountability that are not answered. I think it's our role as a board to make sure that all schools are accountable. We owe that to our families. We owe that to our students. We owe that to make sure that we give them every single opportunity possible to be successful. And I believe that as we look at this resolution, it points out that our desire is to make sure that every student has an equal playing field. You know, I've even talked to parents of private school students. And while I wish their students were in our schools, they have a list of reasons of why they put their child into a private school. Whatever those reasons are, they're valid for that family. And I'm not going to question those reasons. But then if you look at this resolution, are those reasons for that private school parent to put their child back into that private school? Because when you get public funds, how does that change? So even from a private school parent, where these guardrails are removed, so does that change the private school that they're attending? Does it change the reason that they put their child in that private school? But again, I'm not the commissioner of private schools. I am the commissioner of public schools. And so when you look at this resolution, I really appreciate the fact that it points out that we are looking for public dollars that work exclusively with public schools, and I appreciate that so much. Again, looking forward to more important partnerships. I think it's been evident that we've talked about so far, but also too, I think we'd be remiss, and that might be an understatement, if we didn't make some type of resolution like this.
Further discussion?
No,
Yes, Dr. Poe.
I'll just say that I think our forefathers had it right. You know, every time we go to the legislature and we talk about other issues, they say it's a represented democracy, and we shouldn't be voting on every particular issue in the Constitution, so they can't have it both ways. So our forefathers had it right. We should be supporting public schools and every particular child for public education so that we can lift up our communities. And I just think we had it right. So they can't have it both ways. We can't have constitutional issues on things they don't like when they're represented democracy. We represented them to be there. The state constitution or the Supreme Court issued their opinion, and that's where we should be. Not continuously looking ways to circumvent it, because we will, if this does pass, we would be looking at all types of laws coming down in the future, and it wouldn't be good for public school children. Just say, that's my piece to be on record of saying.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm going to say I'm very much in favor of moving this forward. I just want to make sure that everything we're saying is accurate. And I also will say, I would love to see a plan based on what this would mean. I think that is a critical part that wasn't necessarily captured in here. I don't know if it needs to be, but I do believe that is one of the biggest missing pieces from this whole discussion of what's this mean. But those, and I will say, who are well-intentioned with this in the legislature of moving this forward, I think they are really wanting to remove some of the segregation. I'm just going to stick with wealth and poverty. All right. So right now, the only ones who a private education are afforded to are those who can afford it. So I think that's part of the intentionality here, is to say all students would be or have access to this type of education because of this voucher system. So we are saying the exact opposite, that it's going to create a bigger gap there. They're saying it would reduce the gap. Somebody's right, somebody's wrong, somebody's in the middle. How do we defense that we're saying this is going to create a bigger socioeconomic gap for the student? I think that's what that's saying. The practice will increase segregation based on socioeconomic status.
Well, the communities that are most distressed economically are typically, you can identify them. A lot of low-income families across the state, but particularly in rural Kentucky, wouldn't benefit from this at all, except as charlatans show up to open a private school to claim the voucher, when these students' families are not quite able to make up the differential. I mean, the finances do not work. They haven't worked any place. The charter school movement is most vulnerable, even when they work with a private charter management company. The greatest vulnerability is revenue predictability, because the students may not stay, the charter fees from the management company may go up, and there is very often, it's misfeasance more often than malfeasance, I guess folks would say, though I think there's a healthy dose of both in here. But financial management tends not to be the strong suit. So there again, the charter school decides who they want to keep, who they want to not have as a part of their data, and they set some students out. And there is, because they've already collected the voucher or the state charter allocation, and the public school gets the student because that's the only place they have to go. And the school is already distressed. It's already underfunded. And they get more students now needing remediation, most likely. So who are those students likely to be? Charters do not keep, private schools do not keep kids who tend to be a discipline problem. Public schools have to find a way to help address the discipline problem, because we've got attendance issues that we want to address, and the interest of the student. There is no place we can send them. We have to problem solve. We have to work with other agencies to address their needs. We have to work with their families to address their needs. We have to work with their communities to address their needs. Private schools and other institutions do not have that obligation. And we act as though those obligations don't take resources. They do require resources. We are now addressing the impact of catching up on the responsibility to transport our students, even in the midst of a bus driver shortage, and which is a labor issue, a broader labor issue that our schools are contending with, where other schools don't even have to. You can get here, you can come here if you can get here, and we accept you. Otherwise, they have no such obligation. We are dealing with, there is nothing in this amendment that suggests that these schools are going to be held accountable for anything other than federal laws that may apply regarding public safety and so forth. But it is suggested, there is no suggestion that any state requirements are going to be applied to these entities to which public dollars are supposed to flow. The General Assembly will have the ability to do that. And all the while, our schools are trying to figure out how to provide more vibrant learning experiences, how to be more intentionally accountable for the impact of those experiences, because we care about the impact of those students on their lives. I mean, this is apples and I don't know what this is.
Can I just add to the conversation?
Let me stop. Thank you, Randy,
well,
please.
I think our legislature and the Reform Act, Support Educational Excellence Reform Act, based on the fact that we had the U.S. or the Kentucky Supreme Court ordered at that time that we have equitable and adequate schools, common schools. If Amendment 2 passes, I think in answering your question, or the way I look at it, is we cannot have equitable or adequate or common schools, because $450 million, unless the legislature would come up with that for the amount of students that they would be adding to the system and funding, we couldn't have an adequate education for public education if we reduced $500 million from our budget right now. And they didn't put $500 million more into the budget last year for any particular area. Actually, they reduced taxes in the state income taxes. So my biggest concern is on the equity and adequacy of common schools. in Boone County and 3 counties in northern Kentucky, they would lose $60 million, would have to go out of their coffers to fund additional students. So adequate education isn't even being held right now. So there's no way we can meet adequate education. Now, my thing is if they would have said, hey, here's Amendment 2 with all these other things, and we're going to increase taxes, and we're going to put $500 million, until they say that, I can't sit here as a board member, even with the people that I argue with, and say, well, how can we have an adequate education if you're going to take $40 million out of Boone County schools this year? I mean, that would cut X number of teachers, cut X number of programs. So until I would have that data, I think that's why this resolution tried to walk in between those lines.
Well, and that answers my question, because that does the decrease of funding and the decrease, therefore, in the human capital that it takes to address those students with greater need, that is defensible.
And Justin, on the segregation question, I feel certain that Meredith and Todd looked at other states in terms of the impact of this kind of change in other states. But also, if you just think simply about state dollars going to religious schools, for example, then the segregation happens because, of course, they have faith-based admissions considerations. And so that's kind of underlying this notion that students and families might select a private school that receives public funds based on differentiating characteristics. And then what happens as a result over time is the segregation that's referred to here.
That's what I needed. Thank you.
Sure. Yes, Mike.
I'd like to maybe make it a little simpler, kind of trying to answer Justin's answer or question as well. First of all, I support the resolution, but if you go back and look at the studies that's been ran, even with the funding we received this year and next year for public education, we're still well below what we were funded in 2008 when you talk for inflationary costs. So as a system, we're behind where we were 16 years ago, and we don't have any way as a public board of education, we can't support anything until we can get back to where we need to be able to offer those adequate and equitable education. We have a huge gap. If you really do the research, and Dr. Fletcher's been on some of these as long as Dr. Poe, we're almost at the same gap as we were from our wealthiest to poorest public school systems as we were prior to 1990. So we've taken those steps back. So we can't look at adding any extra funding anywhere else other than to our public school system to get us back to where we need to be competitive with 2008 funding. And I think before you even begin the discussion of this, anything else, that has to be our focus as a public board of education. We need the funding back to where we were in 2008, not even to be in 2024. So all else is off the table until we get to that point, and all the other notwithstandings and all of the constitution of that would allow the legislators not to have to ever address this again. And that's something we can't ever support as a public entity.
There are.
Dr. Todd?
Oh, excuse me. I just want to say I fully support this resolution. Appreciate the way it's written. I'm reminded of a discussion I had with a former governor who wanted.
Just a second while we try to increase your volume.
Okay.
Can't hear it up here.
Maybe I can cut myself off here. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
We're getting there.
Okay. I was hearing an echo here. Okay.
Get up. Thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Todd.
Okay. I applaud this resolution. I was wondering what we were going to do about it. I know we have to walk a line, but I'm reminded of a conversation I had with the governor previously when I was at UK, and wanted me in the worst way to start a vet school, but he cut me 10 times in 10 years. And so I don't see how they can look at what they've done for education. We've come a long way since 1990. And I grew up in a small rural school. It was segregated. It was all white. But I would take some of our used chemicals over to the Arlington Million School, give it to them, and was appalled at what they had to put through. We made tremendous progress in this state.
And to try to do anything to move backwards, which is what this would do, without a plan, as someone has also pointed out, is just a travesty. So I applaud the resolution the way it's written and fully support it.
Wow.
There are,
Always yes, please.
I wasn't being rude. I was looking up something that a high school, that a middle grade school principal sent me. There are 23 schools in Boone, Kenton, and Campbell County that are private schools. There are 23 there. Fayette and Jefferson, I think, are 1 and 2. And then your 3 counties come in third. When you, those are the 3 highest populated areas of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Can you imagine the drastic impact it would have on the public schools in the most populated areas of Kentucky?
Yes.
If this were to happen. And that's a public record of all the, because I think you did be a certified school, is that right? You received the funds?
Accredited.
And she sent me a list of all the certified schools in the state of Kentucky. And once you get out of those 3 counties, people in Lincoln County or other counties, I mean, they're not going to have access to this. It's not going to be available to them, even if it were to pass. And it's just because Lincoln County, you talked about your money. I'm not, they were told me what the figure is. I'm not going to say it because it might be wrong. Okay. But even for a small rural county, this is true. Because even if our kids don't go, the pot the money comes out of is going to get reduced.
Right.
So we are in essence going to get less.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. There's only one pot of money.
There's only one pot of money.
It's got to go somewhere.
And so even if our students stay there, we're still going to get less money for our students.
Yes.
No question.
Do we still rank about 37th to 40th nationally in per pupil student funding? Do we know where we are in that?
It's
That's
down
about
in the
right.
30s somewhere. Man, you're about right.
Thought we had gone
Just from my recollection.
Yeah.
We did decrease into the 20s at one time, but we've went backwards, as Mike said, since
Yeah.
2000, whatever it was. Eight. Yeah. Yeah. we
I think
moved
that's
up
a very
in the
powerful
20s.
point, talking about, and I know funding is where we are
Right.
really
Sure.
laying our cards out. If we're in the upper 30s, why are we spending money somewhere else? I think that's a really important piece to bring into this.
Well, when we were at the KSS Summit, Representative Petrie said, well, tell me what that number is. I can tell you it's not 450 million less than what we have now for an adequate education. I may not know exactly what it's going to cost me, but I know it's not 450 million less. And I think that his conversation also, I'm just trying to read between the lines, he was saying that this state has a reckoning within about 10 years with the existing budgets and the cost of what we have now. But to add 500 million more is what the cost would be if you take the average allocation now and just put it into the private sector of students already there. Not whether it increases or decreases, just to put it in there. So that means every school in the Commonwealth, as you said, decreases the existing base. There's no way to do it without an additional revenue and not, so I've been reading flyers that said, oh, this is going to increase dollars for public education and increase teacher salaries. I've been in this business 40 years. I haven't seen that yet from any legislature. So I don't know where all that's coming from. And it'd be great if they did. But right now, that's not what's in front of us.
Yeah.
I think that's the key. If it passes, we're going to fight all these issues for the next 20 to 30 years. But right now, the issue is we shouldn't have to fight those issues and take away from what we're doing, because we were making improvements. And then up till about 2008, I mean, this state was starting, and everything the Pritchard Committee, everybody that was putting out was really increasing. But then we didn't keep up with inflationary costs. So what's happened? Well, it's went this way. We didn't have textbooks for 10, 15, 20 years now almost. We haven't supported professional development in the last 15 or 20 years. So.
And we're on the heels or on the tips of a massive teacher shortage.
Yeah. Right. And we talked about state salary schedule before. I mean, you know, we looked it up and how sad that is. You know, the last time they put any money into the state teacher salary was back in 2016. So, you know, that's what, 8 years ago. So that tells you that how are teacher salaries going to increase when the state hasn't put any dollars in since 2016? So I don't know how that campaign slogan sells itself anywhere, but.
I'm going to ask the board for a motion regarding this resolution. A motion to
I'll make a
approve.
motion to approve.
Thank you, Dr. Poe. Is there a
Second.
second? Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion regarding this resolution? I'll call the question. All in favor of adopting this resolution regarding the use of public funds for public schools, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you so much. The motion carries unanimously. And I would encourage that we continue to educate each other as we get together and talk about these issues, as we support each other in our efforts to advocate for our system of common schools and the kind of efficient and effective service that we want all of our students to experience. Thank you for a productive meeting. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. We'll reconvene tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make that
Steve,
motion.
is there a second?
So moved.
All right, Holly, thank you so much. All in favor of the motion to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I need to see. Thank you. The ayes have it. See you at 9 in the morning. We are now adjourned.